25 unnerving real-life glitches that will keep you wondering WTF? Be sure to smash the like button. And don't forget to support Horror Girls by subscribing. 1. Greeted a friend who died 3 years ago. This whole thing happened in a restaurant. I was waiting in line near the entrance when I saw a friend of mine walk through the door. I waved at him, and he immediately recognized me. We didn't get to talk for too long because we were waiting in line, but he looked very surprised to see me again. After sitting down at the dining table, it finally hit me. My friend actually died 3 years ago, and somehow I had forgotten about that. I felt needles throughout my body and started to sweat because I didn't know how to react. I looked back to see where he was, and he was there, sitting at the table behind me. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I started feeling nauseous, so I decided to leave. I convinced myself that it was probably his doppelganger or something, but that doesn't explain the conversation we had earlier, and he even remembered my name. 2. I fell off a cliff, and when I was rescued, my entire reality was different. In February 2020, I was snowmobiling for the first time. My BF at the time was driving all day and finally let me drive at the end of the trip. We had been dating for 2 months, and this was our first trip together. I'm going around the last bend, and I accidentally floor the snowmobile instead of pushing the brake. I go flying off a cliff and end up 50 feet down. The snowmobile is on top of me, upside down, still running with the bottom part spinning. My helmet has flown off and my head is 1 inch from a tree. I am terrified. My BF managed to roll off the back at the last minute and is trying to save me, but the snow is really deep and he's having a hard time getting down the steep cliff. My legs are fully submerged in the snow with the snowmobile on top, and I'm not sure if I'm paralyzed. He calls for help and all these men run down to save me. When they finally pull me out, I can stand and it's the happiest moment of my life. I'm not paralyzed. I don't have so much as a scratch on me. Do I have a concussion? Maybe, it's hard to say. The snowmobile also miraculously has minimal damage, only a little plastic windshield part is cracked. In hindsight, this moment is where everything changed for me, but you have to understand that I didn't piece this together and come to this realization until months later. These are the differences. There was suddenly a pandemic. Everything was shut down within a few days. In my old timeline, there was a virus going around, but it had only impacted a few people and was similar to norovirus or flu, not big enough to be worried about. I had a different job. At the time, I chalked it up to the pandemic. We were on the trip because I was about to start a new job. I had signed the contract, and I knew what the role entailed. I was going to start the Monday after. But after the crash, I couldn't get a hold of my new boss for 9 months, and he finally told me I got the job in November, even though I had accepted it in February. He also comments how I'd never been into the office when he gave me a tour in January 2020, and we spent the day together. The role I'm in is completely different from the papers I signed. My loving, awesome boyfriend was physically abusive for the first time that night. He got blacked out and attacked me, choking me. He was crying the next day, and nothing like this had ever happened before. I thought he was traumatized from the crash and let it go. That was another thing that was different. I would have never let that go before. I come from a loving childhood where my dad was my best friend always. I would have never put up with that before the crash, and was shocked I did. In the old timeline, I was on a low dose of Effexor, Xanax, and blood pressure medication. I don't take any medication at all during this timeline. Over the next year, a series of weird things that don't make any sense keep happening to the point I start to feel suspicious. I all of a sudden have an incurable disease I didn't have before. I'm in pictures I have no idea what the context is. I'm wearing clothes I don't own anymore. My friends have memories of me I don't share, and I'm getting more and more depressed. BF keeps physically abusing me and I can't get out of it. I have no will to save myself. I just keep thinking this can't be my life. This isn't my life. It just felt like I wasn't supposed to be here, and I finally look at Reddit and realize that I died in the snowmobile crash, and this is an alternative timeline I'm in. I start to just agree with friends when they say, remember when you said this is that and we went here and did this, but I have no recollection. My CAT scans are normal at this point after visiting the ER. To be honest, I wasn't the most observant person to begin with. A new couch could be in the living room for days and I wouldn't notice, so when all the stores and shops are different in one area of town, I don't know if that was always there or new. I finally work up the nerve to tell my sister, who is surprisingly supportive. She asks what else is different. There was this song in the other timeline. It was a very popular song by a Shania Twain or Sheryl Crow type. Anyone would know it. I sing it to her with the lyrics and tell her we always used to listen to it growing up. She has no recollection of it. I type the words into Google, and the song doesn't exist here. The longer I'm in this timeline, the more I forget the words and melody of the old song. Also, there was no iPhone 13 in the other timeline because Steve Jobs was superstitious and it was supposed to go from iPhone 12 to iPhone 14. I noticed little glitches like that are stupid and don't matter. How do I feel about it now? I've accepted my new reality. I feel bad for my sister and parents in the old timeline, but they're dealing with my death in a freak snowmobile accident. But there's nothing I can do. Trying to find them again would be like trying to walk from Canada to Australia with no map, impossible and a waste of time. I'm just making my reality the best I can now. It clearly for some reason wasn't my time to die, I mean to the point of going to the afterlife if there is one, so I should do something important if I can. I was always agnostic before this but didn't believe in different timelines. I thought movies like The Butterfly Effect and Run Lola Run were dumb concepts. Now I don't rule out anything ever. Edit a few people asking questions, I'll answer the best I can. First, no, I'm not with that guy anymore, he is dumped and blocked. To answer questions about the iPhone, here is my comment to another user. Jobs died in 2011 in the old timeline, as well. He had planned out the designs for the phones way past when he died because he knew he had cancer. He had an elaborate release plan for the phones in the future, did he not hear? And yes, he designed them so that the iPhone 13 would be skipped because he was superstitious. Have I been to therapy? Yes. I've been to multiple therapists, psychiatrists, and counselors. I can't find any evidence of the effects or prescription I had and don't know who would have prescribed it. The bottles were just gone. I don't rule out that I bumped my head and some bad shit happened to the world after that. This is just my theory. I see a lot of people saying, I want to believe you, but... I mean, really, that's your choice. Doesn't impact me either way. Just wanted to share my story. 3. Gained more than an hour of time during a train ride across Europe. So this isn't the most wow story, but it truly intrigued my ex-boyfriend and me when it happened, and to this day we still have no answers as to what happened. Summer of 2017, I was traveling by train all across Europe. One day we booked a train from Copenhagen to Hamburg, a few hours of night train. We had taken this train before. We decided to sleep a little bit and wake up with an alarm before our stop. A while into the ride, we wake up suddenly and see the train is at a stop. We check the time. It's way too early to be our destination. But then we check the name of the train station we're at, and it's Hamburg. We were supposed to arrive at like 6:15 a.m., and it was still 4:50 or something. We got out of the train and dazzlingly walked around the station until our next train a few hours later. When we checked the time and saw it was so early, we couldn't believe it. The train arrived more than an hour early. We don't know how. I took hundreds of trains in my life, and never once did one arrive more than an hour early. Weird. 4. Ball of light, disappearing car, and broken Spotify. Hi! First time posting here. I have a new job, so I've been driving a new route. Although I have driven this way a few times in the past, there is a country road where I have to drive up a slope. On either side of this slope, there is a mud bank that is steep, maybe like a 60-degree angle. There are no side roads. Last week, I was driving up this road on the way home and a ball of light came out on the left, about 30 meters in front of me. It then comes racing down the road straight at me, so I slammed my brakes on assuming it was a cyclist. The light stopped dead about 10 meters in front of me, stopped and turned, and went back to the left into where the bank was. There is no way a cyclist could have gotten up that hill. 2 days later, I was driving the same road on the way home and the car I had been following for a couple of miles then turned left, as if it were turning onto a road, and just disappeared. Again, there are no side roads and the sides are far too steep for anything to just drive straight up it. Today I was driving the road in daylight on my way to work, listening to Spotify as I usually do, and suddenly the songs just start continuously changing every couple of seconds, as if I was pressing the button to skip it. Then the music cut out altogether. Wondering what is going on here? Five. Disappearing/reappearing mother. I'm not even sure if that's an accurate title, but it's fairly close. Let me know if this story doesn't fit this group. When I was 22 and living across the country from my family, I tried to talk to my mother 4 or 5 times a week. After 3 months or so, she stopped answering her phone, so I called other people looking for her. My father didn't answer, my grandmother wouldn't talk to me, she'd say she was busy and just hang up, and no one else had heard from her. No one knew where she was. This lasted a few weeks and I was starting to freak out. Then I got a message from someone about her estate and started crying. I called my dad over and over until he picked up, started crying when he heard my voice, and then hung up on me. I kind of went into a trance, because with no information I had no idea what to do. I couldn't afford to fly home, I was living with someone and helping with the kids, so couldn't just take off, and if she'd been dead 2 weeks, I'd already missed the funeral. My family's faith mandates burial within 48 hours of death. Then 4 days after the call with my dad, I was on the train going into work, and the car shook hard for a minute, then stopped, and the lights went out. A minute later it started again, the lights came on, and off we went. But I thought someone must have moved because the empty seat across from me had a person in it now. Then my phone rang. I answered without thinking because it was my mom's ringtone. She freaked out immediately, started crying and talking frantically because I answered. She'd been trying to find me for 2 weeks. Six. Do I have a doppelganger? It's my first time posting here, but something is bugging me as it keeps repeating itself. Maybe you'll be able to bring some light to what's happening. Part 1. When I was 23, I was working as a cashier at IKEA to pay for university. I was working on Thursday and Friday night and Saturday all day. One normal busy Saturday comes to a couple between 50 and 60. The woman starts to talk to me as if she knew me well and told me something like, "Your mother didn't tell me you were now working at IKEA," to which I responded with surprise by, "I think you're mistaken. I am not the person you think I am." The man took part in the conversation, visibly upset by my answer, and started to ask me why I was saying such things. The conversation went on for a few minutes while I was scanning the products. The man was upset, the lady was starting to sob. I called my manager for help as I had no idea how to handle the situation and there were a lot of people queuing, so I wanted to end things as quickly as possible. At the time my manager arrived, the lady had called her sister, who confirmed her daughter was not working at IKEA. That's when they understood they made a mistake, and I was really not their niece that they confused me for, so they left after a half apology. I was not fully able to process what had happened, but I remember how hurt the woman looked, and how I could see tears in her eyes. It seemed she was 100% convinced I was her niece and seemed pretty close to the niece. Now for background, I am French. I come from the north of France, which is famous for its strong accent, and I was living and working in Toulouse, where it was a very different, also very strong accent, so I don't know how even after talking to me they could still not notice I was not their niece. Also at the time I had long brown hair, which is important for the following. Part 2. Now fast forward to 2016, I am 31 and I live in Switzerland, but I visit my friends in Paris on a weekend. They had booked a table in a restaurant I had never heard of. On the ground floor were a bar and first floor a restaurant. I arrived with one of my friends at the restaurant, opened the door of the bar, and a group of people said, "Here is the singer." Now I am the worst singer ever, and funnily enough, the friend I was with is a decent singer, and we had been to karaoke together once in the past where he swore he would never go back to a karaoke with me ever again, as I was singing so badly that he couldn't sing with me. So I thought for a weird reason that these people knew and were making fun of me. Actually, my friend didn't know them, and they had no reason to make fun of my singing skills or any way to know about it. As I looked confused and was looking for an explanation, they told me that every Friday there was a girl looking exactly like me who'd come to sing and was an amazing singer. At the time I had changed my hair color and was now blonde with short hair, so I thought if that's the same person, that's insane. That she uses to have long brown hair when I had it, and now she has short blonde hair the same time as me. It started to haunt me a little, and every time topic of doppelganger would come to the table, I would tell my story. Part 3. In December 2021, I am 36 and I am attending a Vipassana retreat in Spain. During those types of retreats, you can't talk for 10 days, but on the first evening, you have dinner or lunch all together before silence starts. I was the only French person there as the teachings are held in Spanish. I was sitting at a table of 4 people whom I'd never met before. The woman sitting on my right asked me if I had volunteered in a monastery in the south of France, which surprised me as I had not volunteered there, but I had participated in a retreat in August before, the exact same monastery. But she insisted that 1,5 years ago, I had volunteered in this monastery during a retreat, and that she had met me there. I told her she was mistaken, as August was the first time I went to this place. Now what is weird is that when you do this type of retreat, you spend 10 days with people with no books, no mobile, no entertainment whatsoever, so you have the time to look at people. After spending 10 days with this person, she was still convinced it was me. Again, I had changed my hair color back to my natural brown color. End. So, I have no clues about what's happening here. Is it the same person every time? If yes, we definitely like to go to the same places, in 3 different cities, and change hairstyles at the same time. D. Are those timelines crossing? Do I have a hidden twin sister? What's really odd to me is the fact that all those people seemed reasonably close to the person and saw them on a regular basis for a long period of time and still were sure I was her. 7. The school bus disappeared into thin air? I've been thinking about this a lot since it happened 2 days ago, and I don't know what to think. I was driving to school on Friday, and I was on a narrow back road with lots of hills because my school is in the middle of nowhere. Back roads are my quickest way to get there. I saw a big yellow school bus driving down the road, as I often saw and dreaded seeing on this road because it's so narrow. I could tell that the bus and I would be driving past each other right on a big hill that you can't see over once you are close to it. So, to avoid crashing head-on or sideswiping the bus, I slowed down and moved over as far to the side of the road as I could as I approached the hill. However, when I reached the top of the hill, there was no school bus in sight. I could see the end of the back road that I was on, and there are no crossroads, parking lots, alleys, or anything like that where the bus could have turned. I drive this road nearly every single day. There's also no way that the bus could have turned around and gone back the other way on this narrow road, especially within the short amount of time between when I first saw the bus and 3 to 5 seconds later when I reached the top of the hill and saw that there was actually no bus. There were no other cars between this hill where I was and the end of the road, so it's not like I could have mistaken a car for a school bus either. I've tried to make sense of it and come up with explanations, but I can't think of any. Please let me know what you think. This has been bothering me for days, and I really don't know what to think of it. It's one of those experiences that makes you question everything. 8. My shopping bag vanished. My previous post got deleted because it had several stories. In my opinion, they were all related. However, I do understand the rules in this sub, so I hope it's okay. I'm posting them separately. Several glitches happened around the same time. This is the first one. Some years ago, I went to the local supermarket nearby with a shopping bag. Not that it matters, but I have dozens of shopping bags, but only one red one. It was a bit smaller than the others, so I preferred using that one because, well, it was easier to carry. I got out of my car, handbag over my shoulder, and the shopping bag on top of it. On my shoulder, I was holding both with my hand closed against my body while I entered the supermarket. Once inside, the bag was gone, but I was still holding my handbag. My rational mind thought I maybe let go of the bag without realizing it, so I went outside again and checked the parking space if the wind was playing with it. No bag to be seen. Next, I thought I had simply forgotten the bag and did in fact only feel the handbag in my hand, so I went to my car to double check. Nothing. Next, I thought I dropped it inside the supermarket instead, so I went inside again, checked the whole supermarket and people too, just in case someone found it. Nothing. I went to the info desk and asked them if they found the bag. Was there something of value in it? Because they were thinking it was maybe stolen. I said the bag was empty. They too checked the whole supermarket, but they didn't find the bag. Once home with my groceries, I checked my car and my home. Now, several years later, moving furniture and several declutters, I never ever found that bag again. Until this day, I tell other people jokingly the entrance was actually a portal into another universe, something I read in a spiritual book. This was way before I did lots of research. Maybe I made a quantum jump into a parallel universe in which there was no bag. My ex used that bag, too, so I had to explain to him the bag just vanished. It was no big deal as we still had a dozen of shopping bags at home, but he wasn't too sure about my quantum theory of making a jump. Any other ideas about what happened are much appreciated. Smile. 9. Someone/something slowed down my car to prevent a car accident. This is part 3 of several glitches which happened in the same period. At that time I had 2 bunnies and one of them was sick, so I had to bring him to the vet. After the consult, I was driving back home. My bunny was in a cat carrier on the passenger seat next to me. I was almost home when suddenly another person turned left without looking. I hit my brakes very hard, so hard the cat carrier hit the dashboard, but not too hard. Everything slowed down and it felt as if my car was lifted in the back, as if the 2 wheels in the back were no longer on the ground. During this slow time, I was able to get the carrier back to the passenger seat. What happened in a few seconds, I experienced as a minute or maybe even longer. It was like, after pushing the brake as hard as I could, someone slowed down the car even more but way more gently because the cat carrier no longer moved. It was a matter of inches, but we didn't crash. In fact, the other driver was not shocked at all. She was like, phew. At least she saw me coming. I shrugged my shoulders in a WTF, because I did not see her coming, and continued my drive. I was so sure we were going to crash, and it would have been my first car accident ever. But we didn't. And my bunny, even though the carrier moved to the dashboard, he wasn't hurt at all. I can't help but think that period of my life with all the glitches was very important. At that time, I did a course on manifestation, so I knew a bit about the universal laws and quantum jumping. Maybe I did make a few jumps, which changed my course of action along the way. 10. Saved by glitches? It's happened to me several times while driving. Times when I must have crashed, or worse, it was unavoidable, yet miraculously, somehow I didn't. Once I was driving straight at a 3-way intersection with my child in the car. I was on the street going straight, with another street ending perpendicular to the one I was on. There were no stop signs, so the street going straight had the right of way. A car turning onto the street from the other would have to yield. The intersection looked like this. Noticing I had the right of way, I didn't think about it, just drove straight through the intersection, maybe slightly distracted because I was talking with my son in the car. I was about to pass the street meeting mine on the right. Except that too late, I saw another car come through the intersection on my right and turn toward me, attempting to make a left turn, but right where I was. It was clear the driver hadn't slowed to see if a car was going through, they just plowed through to make their left turn as they would if another car was not there. At the rate of speed each of us was going, and as close as our cars were to one another, I could see it was inevitable that we were going to crash. I hit the brake, but there just wasn't enough time to avoid the collision. I was literally about 3 inches from the middle of the other car. I was going to T-bone it. As I braced for impact, nothing. My car hadn't yet completely stopped, but the other car was suddenly way past me. Like I said, doing all I could to try to avoid the crash, it was impossible not to collide. Yet somehow, in a mere blink, we did. We both stopped for a minute, full of adrenaline. I looked over at the other driver, and I saw that she looked as confused as I was. Another time I was driving north on Interstate 5 in California, somewhere probably near Bakersfield. As it is for most of the length of the interstate, there were 2 lanes and many cars. I was in the left passing lane, behind several other cars going above the posted 70 speed limit. Unlike most of them though, I always maintain a safe distance behind the car in front of me. Always, except for the moments when it's not possible, like when I get cut off, or if a car in front suddenly stops, for example. This is what happened on this day. A bright, sunny California day. The air was clear and visibility was perfect. But in my little car, I can only see the car directly in front of me when the freeway goes straight. Unlike in a pickup or SUV or something, where you can see above the cars in front of you, and you can see what's going on ahead for the next half mile or so. I was following at what should have been a safe distance, while still being mindful not to slow down the cars behind me. Then suddenly the car in front of me swerved a little into the right lane to avoid hitting something in the road that they clearly hadn't seen ahead of them. In this slow-motion moment, I could see, for a fraction of a second, that the 4 to 5 cars directly ahead of me in the left lane had all swerved and or stopped, and when I saw the giant thing in the road, I had literally no time to avoid hitting it. I couldn't swerve. There was a car right on my right side, and a wall with no shoulder on my left. This giant thing looked like a very solid, heavy trunk or something, at least half as tall as my car. Hitting this would have been a pretty major accident, smashing the front end of my little car and causing who knows how many cars behind me going over 70 to crash into me and so on, into a big pileup. I saw what happened and imagined the rest, all in the single second I had before I would crash into it, hard. There was no possible way for me not to hit it, as I couldn't swerve, nor completely stop. It's not possible to go from 75 miles per hour to 0 in 1 second. Like in the previous scenario, I braced for impact. And suddenly I was past the giant trunk. It happened so fast that I couldn't even see how I got past it, but I did. In my rear view, I could see the trunk was still in my lane, but I had gone through it. Finally, another time I was on the freeway, the left lane behind a pickup with furniture in its open bed. Suddenly, because of the wind, a large wooden drawer began lifting up in the truck bed just a few feet in front of me. I couldn't swerve. Again, I had nowhere to go. Physics would tell you that at a certain point, when the drawer lifts up higher than the top of the truck bed, the wind will take over and it can only come out. I knew it was about to crash into my windshield, and who knew how I would survive that at such a high rate of speed. I imagined being blinded by broken glass at the same time that a heavy wooden drawer entered my windshield and smashed into my head. I really thought I was about to die. I know it sounds as though I had plenty of time to react and slow way down, but it all happened in a matter of a second or two, and I didn't. I saw the drawer lift up higher than the edge of the truck bed, and then it went back down, onto the floor of the truck bed, safe from an inevitable, windy, high-speed escape into my head. Again, I was saved by a miracle. I always think of these things as God saying, "It's not my time," and He or a guardian angel intervenes, saving me from the inescapable. But reading these glitch stories herein, I've realized my experiences really could fit here as well. So you can believe it, either way you want to. Or maybe even another way. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and thanks for reading. 11. Little black glitchy line was spotted by my partner and me. Yesterday evening when I was looking at my partner in the hallway, I saw a thin black glitch appear next to him for a couple of seconds, kind of similar to the visual glitches you might get every now and again when a GPU is starting to fail. I instantly said, "I just saw a glitch," partly as a joke. But I did actually see something. He then got a bit excited, and slightly worried, and told me that he saw the same thing that afternoon. It is probably nothing, but I was wondering if other people have seen this recently? We don't have any other visual issues, as far as I know. We weren't drunk or anything, either. I do have chronic sleeping issues, but my partner doesn't. It's just the way he looked when I told him about what I saw that makes me believe he wasn't making it up to make me feel better or anything along those lines. 12. Awoke to a grid above me. So I think I encountered a glitch last night. I've read similar stories on here, so thought I'd post and see what others think. I was watching a film on Netflix late last night and fell asleep halfway through. I woke up because I assume I wasn't comfortable in the position I was sleeping in on my sofa. I remember hearing the TV still on in the background at first, then opened my eyes and I could see a bright red grid above me. I stared for a couple of seconds in confusion, then blinked and it faded. I know I wasn't just dreaming because it got my attention, and I quickly got up and headed to my bed. It made me think of the simulation theories I have read about. I've never experienced anything like this before, and now I have. I just have so many questions. Like, what was that? What could it mean? Where are my sleepy eyes just playing tricks on me? 13. Seen flash of death? Happened last week. Sitting at home playing video games when for a split hair of a second I'm somewhere else seeing something else. It was black except for a bright white circular light a bit off center to the right. My gut reaction toward what I was seeing, what I was feeling, is that I was on my back on a table with an overhanging light. Kind of like an autopsy room. My brain didn't put all that together until a few seconds after it happened, but immediately after it happened I was left with a sinking feeling in my heart. Did I blink into a parallel universe? Am I dead there? Did I briefly wake up from this matrix? I wasn't tired, but did I really just have a split-second dream? Read a post earlier about seeing black line glitches which reminded me of this, and automatically gave me a hint of that sinking feeling again. 14. Simi hadn't moved yet. I just bought a house and moved in this past weekend. Based on my location, I now head south instead of north to work, and I don't pass through the town anymore like I used to. Cue my first day heading to work, and I'm wondering if I have enough time to get to Aroma Joe's coffee, but I realize I don't, so I stopped at a gas station I had never been to before. My original route to work, Aroma Joe's, was on my way, so I frequently stopped there in the morning. My friend texts me as I'm pulling out of the gas station and says she just saw me at Aroma Joe's in town. Same car. Looked just like me. Wearing my Sugarloaf hat that I've never seen anyone else wearing. I honestly had to stop and think if I had gone to Aroma Joe's because I was wearing my Sugarloaf hat and was so confused. Seems like Simi was still driving to work from my old location and forgot I moved. Came home late one night and saw my brother on the couch. Thing is, my brother was at a bar across town. This happened over 10 years ago when I was about 17 to 18 years old. My older brother and I were both living with our parents at the time, and it was only us four that lived in the house. I came home a little late one night and was greeted by a locked front door. I had no house key to get in, and I didn't want to wake my parents up, as they'd be irritated, to say the least. So I decided to walk around back to see if the back doors happened to be unlocked. Our house was an L-shaped home, with one window in the living room on what would be the bottom of the L, and double doors around the back that lead into the living room. As I went along the side of the house, bottom of the L, I noticed the living room light was on. I looked through the window to see if anyone was in there. It was my brother. The back of his head was facing me. He was sitting in his usual position watching TV, kind of half sitting, half laying down on the couch. I thought, sweet, I'll just walk around to the back and knock on the doors to let me in. As I got to the back of the house where the doors were, I was met with no TV or lights on in the living room. I thought it was kind of odd, but maybe he shut everything off and went to bed in that 5-second span of me walking around back. So I pulled out my phone and called him, which he answered, and I asked if he could let me in. He said, "I'm not home, I'm at the bar right now." My heart sunk into my stomach and I got goosebumps to the core. I told him I saw him in the living room through the window. We both got freaked out, and I ended up waiting for him to get home before going inside. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. We still talk about it quite often, and we simply have no explanation for what happened that night. If you're wondering, it could not have been my dad, as they have different hair colors, brown/blonde, and completely different builds. I was not under the influence of any substance. 15. Missing train glitch. I was riding the Caltrain from the Peninsula Bay Area to San Francisco. I rode my bike to the train station. The train pulled up before I could purchase my ticket, so I didn't have time to purchase a ticket. The train had 6 carts. I got on near the end of the train, second car from the end. I locked my bike up and sat down. As I was sitting, a conductor was walking through the cars towards me. I got nervous because I didn't have a ticket. He walked up to me, my heart sank with fear. When he approached me, he asked if I had an iPhone charger. In shock and feeling relieved at the same time, I said no. He proceeded to walk past the next car. I decided to close my eyes and meditate to release all those emotions I was feeling. 10 minutes later, I opened my eyes and that last car was gone. The door the conductor walked through had changed into a window. I could now see the tracks through the window. As I got off the train, there were only 5 cars. 16. Trapped in the back rooms? Okay, the title is just being a bit overdramatic, but this incident was weird. Basically, many years ago, I was at someone's house, family/family friend or something of the like. Anyway, after we went into the house, I went to go look at their TV in their TV room a little while later. I liked the cartoons that were on. But one of the people that lived there told me I needed to leave since I had a candy bar and they did not want their room messy, so I did. When I got done, I went to go back to the room, but could not find it. Like I walked up and down pretty much the whole house in the area that I remember it being at. It was like it just vanished. I mean, I was and still am pretty bad with directions, but come on. Never found again it before we left. Still remember it pretty vividly to this day. 17. The sun turned off. It was about a year ago. I was home, in the middle of noon, everything just for a second got dark. Like there was no sun at all, absolute darkness just for a second. I thought I was wrong, but my sister from the other room just said, "Did the sun turn off?" I haven't seen darkness like that before. I asked whoever I could, but no one experienced it or believed me. It was just me and my sister. 18. My cat teleported twice. Last night, I tucked my girlfriend into bed around 10:45 p.m. and, as usual, her calico cat was nestled in her arms. I had some work to take care of, so I left the room and shut the door to prevent the light from keeping my girlfriend awake. On my way out, I looked back and the cat was in her arms still. I sat down on the couch with my back to the wall of the bedroom. The door was just to my right, about a foot away and in clear view. After about 30 to 45 minutes, the cat started meowing just behind the wall and scratching on the door to be let out. This is typical, as the cat likes to come and go throughout the night. I opened the door, let the cat out, and shut the door promptly behind the calico. I pat her head and her nose booped me. I watched her for a moment as she sauntered off to the kitchen before turning my attention back to my computer. Not even 5 minutes later, the door creaks open next to me and I look over, expecting that the cat had tried to open the door to get back into the bedroom. To my utter astonishment, the door had only been open a few inches for a few seconds, but the cat was already inside peering out. I watch her nose the door open fully and walk back outside into the main room. She made long eye contact before walking off to the kitchen again. I instinctively closed the door. I was shocked. How did this cat get back inside? I looked everywhere for an unknown entrance into the bedroom, but I found no open vents or unexpected holes in the room. I started to feel like I was being toyed with and video called my mom, if she was the only one I knew was up. I explained to her how I was absolutely sure that there were no other entrances to the room and that I would have noticed her walking back to the door, opening it to get inside, shutting it without my noticing, and then opening it from the inside again. She didn't believe me, and for whatever panic-driven reason I had, I went to go find the cat in the kitchen. She was nowhere to be found anywhere in the home. A terrible dread fell upon me, and somehow I knew deep inside that the cat was still inside the bedroom. I opened the bedroom door and the cat was patiently sitting on the floor facing the entrance. How? I literally just watched her leave the bedroom twice. My girlfriend was asleep. I'd have seen and heard the door open. There were no unknown entrances to the room. We only have one calico. Truthfully, I had the first panic attack in my life. I'm a pretty normal, stable guy who has always had good control over my emotions, until I saw the lies of my reality crash down upon me. It freaked me the hell out and I hyperventilated, freaked out my then awake girlfriend and my mom on the phone. I know for a fact that I had touched the cat a few minutes prior and heard her and seen her. I have no explanation for this, and it happened flagrantly in front of me. Addendum 1. I have been pretty sleep deprived lately, and it's possible that I hallucinated this. But what made me question this hypothesis is the fact that it was sustained for over 10 to 15 minutes despite my mental clarity, and that I heard, saw, and felt the cat clearly. Addendum 2. I do have a nasty history with the paranormal. As a teen, I was terrorized for years by something like the shadow people, but more nebulous and shapeless. Something that caused an inexplicable loss of time and instilled a soul-shattering terror that I've never felt anywhere else. I'd awake to find them by my bed, and eventually, I would find out that my brothers had heard them whispering my name. When I called my mom, she told me that I should ask my dad about sleep deprivation hallucinations. I called him up today and we went to dinner. He told me that even though he and my mother had dismissed this haunting when I was younger, he fully believed me, and had, in fact, experienced their terror once. It chilled me to the bone, But he said that he had slept in my bed once when I was away and that he awoke to the presence at the edge of the bed. Neither he nor my mom knew what to do or how to address it, but they knew I was feeding it somehow. So, they decided to give no credence to my claims in the hopes that I would forget about the presence and stop feeding it. After many years, I just learned this today. My mom was tacitly helping me by telling me to talk to my dad, but couldn't bring herself to address it directly. Terrifyingly, my dad, who has always been a stoic and no-nonsense guy, not only told me that he believes me and had experienced it but gave me a warning. He told me that I should, at all costs, seek to ignore the presence and move on with my life. This is relevant because there's a detail of the story that otherwise wouldn't make much sense. As I was tucking my girlfriend in and giving her a message, I noticed what appeared to be a shadow fly across the room. Not even a minute later, our dryer turned itself off. We both thought it to be unusual, but I quickly dismissed it. Now, I'm wondering if the shadow and dryer are connected to the cat teleporting. Tonight, I've left the bedroom door open to prevent any further Schrodinger's cat situations here. I'm hoping I just hallucinated last night, and that this isn't proof of a simulation or that sick presence continuing to haunt me. 19. We got caught in a time loop. This happened to me about 2 years ago. Some friends and I were driving up to a spot that we visit often. It's literally one highway the entire way because it cuts through mountains. It's the only way to get there, the only road. You can't mistakenly go on another road. Anyway, the drive is about 2.5 hours. We've done this drive almost a dozen times. We had the GPS going just to keep us aware of exactly where we were and how much time was left, even though we didn't really need it for directions. I mean, it's one road straight through Lowell. At some point, we noticed that the GPS hasn't given updates in a long time and that it's no longer working. Weird, but it's one of those older dash-mounted ones, so maybe it just finally crapped out. What was weird was we went to check the time and we hadn't yet reached a landmark we should have hit 30 minutes ago. We all laugh about how the driver needs to pick up the pace and think nothing of it. Until another 30 minutes and another. And suddenly we're all really confused. We keep driving, and driving, and driving, but it feels like we're getting nowhere, and we've now exceeded what should have been the total time for the entire trip. We're all looking at the time on our phones in disbelief. Remember, this drive is literally one road, it's the only road, and there's no possible way to make a wrong turn. We're not passing any landmarks, just trees and rocks, trees and rocks. We kept the time on our phones for another couple of hours until everyone but the driver fell asleep. When we woke up, over 5 hours had passed. The driver remarked that he was tired and didn't remember much of the drive. Somehow we drove for over 5 hours on what is a 2.5-hour drive, and that didn't seem to end until we all fell asleep. We all have kind of a foggy memory of what we talked about during the ride, and when we fell asleep. We also know not one of us saw the landmark we were waiting on, despite it being literally impossible to miss, and something we always watch out for. It's literally part of our trip. One of the weirdest experiences in my life, and I get this weird feeling that washes over me every time I think about it. 20. The weirdest experience of my life. Vague title, but I couldn't think of anything else. Also, let me know if this would be better in another sub. So about 2 years ago I would walk to and from high school. I only live around 4 blocks away, so it was a brisk walk to and from. I live in a safe neighborhood in the middle of a desirable school district. I know all my neighbors, even the ones down the block, and recognize everyone on my walk to and from. That's why this shook me up so much. I was walking back home from school one afternoon when a yellow car pulled up just a few feet from behind me. I didn't think anything of it and kept walking, yet they honked at me. I turn around and look at the car, and I vaguely recognize the people inside. There was a driver and 2 kids my age in the back. The driver looked similar to my homeroom teacher, and the 2 kids looked similar to 2 twins who are in my grade. I felt as if something was telling me to keep walking and ignore them, but like a horror movie protagonist, curiosity got the best of me and I walked over to the car. When I got closer, I noticed details about the people in the car that seemed off. For one, they looked eerily similar to the people I knew from school, yet each one had just a few details that made them unrecognizable. It felt like the uncanny valley effect. I can't really explain it well unless you know the people in person, but it was like someone had a police sketch of them made ultra realistic, if that makes sense. When I got to the passenger window, the woman said, "Do you know these two from school?" And I just said, yeah, I think so. And she nodded and asked if I needed a ride home. I told her my dad would pick me up a block down from here. She asked if I needed a ride down the block, and I told her I would be fine. I felt the worst kind of vomit-inducing dread when the woman talked to me, and it didn't help that the two girls were dead silent in the back the entire conversation. She told me to have a good day, and as I walked away she honked at me again. I whipped my head around, completely freaked out, and she just smiled and waved at me. I booked it home after that, locked my doors, and waited for my dad and sisters to get home. When they did, I told them what happened. My dad was nonchalant about it and told me to not walk up to cars next time. My sister, on the other hand, was super freaked out and even now doesn't want me to bring it up. My friends think that I met some weird doppelgangers, and I kind of agree. 2 years later and I can still remember it. It just weirds me out. 21. My cousin's face has been changed and only I notice it. This story takes place 8 years back. We used to live in a joint family of 17 people. So we were used to everyone's habits and dislikes and personalities. One time my cousin, let's call him A, got dengue and she had taken 2 weeks off from school. We were worried for her as she was vomiting continuously. She took a whole room for herself and only she and her mother would be there. We were not allowed as they scared us that the dengue is viral. Once she got cured and I saw her after 2 weeks, she was not the same cousin. Her face was completely changed. I asked my mother who she is and she said she A is my cousin. Afterward, I told my siblings that this is not A, but they made fun of me. Still, after 8 years she is married and has her own home. Whenever she comes to visit she just gives me eerie vibes as she has a totally different face, but the same personality. For the first year after her dengue, I could remember her old face, but now that is also forgotten and I had accepted the fact until recently I saw the old face of A in one of my dreams. 22. Lost time when hiking in the woods. This has happened several times when hiking in a specific, general area, around 10,000 acres, in New Hampshire, US. Looking at my watch or noticing the position of the sun in the sky, it's hours later in the day than it should be. I can't explain the lost time. This area was settled by Abenaki in the old times. There is at least one artifact, a bowl carved on a rock ledge near a waterfall, that was recorded by archaeologists. An Indian trail is shown on old maps. I have found petroglyphs and, I suspect, graves and other things. The area was settled by Europeans for a time, but they all left or died. There are only cellar holes and cemeteries now. It's all gone back to the woods. There is a lot of iron in the bedrock. Compasses don't always work right. It seems to me that lightning hits some of the hills much more often than is typical. Though I'm not any kind of expert in that field. I am experienced in hiking and camping in the woods. The amount of lightning scars on trees is crazy in my opinion. I don't drink or use drugs. I have never had lost time anyplace else. 23. I saw my dead father driving a car. I was 11 at the time he died. When I was a kid he would tell me that once I got taller he'd get me to play 8-ball pool with him. This never happened because he died before I was even 5 feet 4 inches. Fast forward to last Saturday night, I was playing 8-ball pool with my friends. At one moment, the memory of him telling me that once I got tall he'd get me to play with him crossed my mind and short of wish we would have got to play. Didn't pay much attention though. On our way back to our homes, being on foot, we were walking on the road but made room for cars to pass whenever they approached us. Once we were about 3 blocks away from my house I saw a car passing, with my father as the driver. I'm so sure it was him. I've seen his dead body so he can't be alive, and even if he did, why would he be driving in our neighborhood? I almost screamed and wanted to start running so as to catch the car, but I figured out it would be pointless. I even thought of throwing my phone at the car so as to catch its attention. I kinda regret it now, I'm not sure. Honestly, it's not like I miss him like hell and think of him 24/7, so I don't think my mind would make this up. Anyone experienced anything similar? 24. How can someone you've never met have memories of meeting you? My partner and I are visiting Oakland, CA. It's our first day in town. We're walking around, window shopping and checking out the area when a random man approaches us. "Hey, how's your visit going?" We assumed he was a homeless man just being kind. And with us being from the Midwest, it's probably not hard to tell we're not from the area. We respond with a generic "Our day's been fine. Thanks. And yours?" The man then proceeds to tell my partner, "You're from Missouri. You were wearing a blue Kansas City shirt." He said a couple of other things, but I was in shock, so I don't remember what he said after that. Anyways, this was accurate information. He has that exact shirt. He wasn't wearing it that day, but it was one that he wore all the time. We still to this day have no idea what that was. It makes my head hurt thinking about it. TLDR, random man knew specific details about my partner. Says he met us the day before. But it was our first day in the city. 25. I think I died. About a year ago, I was putting gas in my car when I heard and felt a concussion in my chest from an explosion. The sound was deafening and the shockwave hit me in the chest and made me stumble back a bit. I gather myself for a moment and look around at other pumps, and nobody else seems to have even heard this loud-ass explosion. Every pump at the gas station was full and people were out front talking and things, but nobody but me seemed to have even acknowledged what had just happened. I honestly think that gas pump blew the fuck up while I was beside it, and I just immediately came into another consciousness/reality. I honestly don't know what happened that day, but I was freaked out about it for a few days afterward, and that's when I stumbled upon the quantum immortality theory.
Not leaving us so soon, are you?
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And feel free to leave a comment or email the Horror Girls with suggestions, your own scary experience, original fiction, disconcerting videos, or anything horror related that you would like to share. We'd also love to help promote indie or up-and-coming horror authors by posting a book review or your book trailer. Email us for more info.